This is Eldad Amara, and this is my channel, Eyes Wide Shut. Eyes Wide Shut. Like my t-shirt? Eyes Wide Shut. With the logo at the top there, EWS, and then Eyes Wide Shut underneath. These t-shirts will be coming online along with some other merch soon. Man, the world is starting to change and people are starting to wake up. The world is starting to change and people are starting to wake up. There's a lot of people now that's starting to come out of politics, right? They're disillusioned with the political arena and with the political states. Also, people are now getting fed up with religion. And what are they doing? Instead of turning to religion, people are turning to alternatives such as spirituality. They're finding out that their messages aren't really being answered through religion. So they're turning towards spirituality, and in mass as well. There's a hell of a lot of people that's turning towards spirituality. They're finding that religion isn't really answering their prayers. Now, in the political arena, you've got these new political parties starting to spring up all over the place as people are becoming more disillusioned with the political system. And again, their queries, right? Their problems aren't being answered. So now they're turning to other political parties such as the Reform Party and other groups such as this. Notice that there's a lot of women now who are starting to enter the sports arena and also within the music scene and also within politics, even though politics is starting to decline. Many years ago, you never had women playing football. Yeah, you never had women doing things, sports like boxing and rugby. And now you're starting to get a lot of women who are into rugby. They're into football. They're into cricket. They're into boxing. So things are starting to change. There's a new energy that's coming to the planet. And guess what? The old ways are starting to disappear. The old politics is starting to disappear. Religion and these religious institutions are slowly starting to decline. You've now got new family types emerging in society. You used to have the old extended family, you had the family, and then you had the extended family. Now this is starting to disappear as new types of families are starting to emerge. And you could say it started during the 1980s when we had the nuclear family under Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. Now you have many different types of family groups now. You have single parent groups. Yeah, you've got people who have decided to have children through artificial insemination. All right, so those types of groups are now starting to come up. You're starting to have groups where gay couples are starting to have families and family types of their own. Yeah, so now you've got so many different types of families. You even have guys and women who decide that they don't want to have partners, that they are happier being on their own, that they feel much more happier being on their own. So now you have these various different types of family groups starting to emerge. Society is starting to change, people. We are now in a new era. We are now living in new times. You see, that old system has to go and a new system has to come in place. The old ways, the old ethics, the old values are starting to disappear as new ethics, new morals, yeah, new ways and ideas, ways of looking at things are starting to now emerge. The old system has to go, and in its place, something new has to come in its place. Some people don't like change. Some people don't want to accept change. But the only true reality is change. You have to change or you get left behind. Now, the house of cards is starting to fall like a pack of cards, like a house of cards. And new ways are coming forth. Now you've got something called the BRICS nations. To this, or another group that's come up is called the BRICS nations, which is a bit like the G7. They're similar sort of policies, but at the same time, they are different. So you had originally the G7, which came before the BRICS nations, and now you have the BRICS nations. So what are the countries that make up the BRICS nations? These countries consist of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Okay? And Brazil has, for example, its key part or role in BRICS is agriculture. Have Russia, and with Russia, their key role is energy, yeah? Energy exporters, strategic geopolitical influences. And opposite to them, you have the G7. Who make up the G7? Which is USA, UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail in regards to these two groups, these two different dichotomies, but realize that you now have the BRICS nations and you have the G7. In another video, I'll go into these two dichotomies in a little bit more detail. But notice, people, how things are starting to change. How things are starting to change. They're saying that by 2030, 70 to 80% of the jobs that we can do as human beings, those jobs will be gone soon. And in its place, AI and robots will be taking the jobs of human beings. So we should be really thinking about what sort of jobs can we do in the future if 70 to 80% of our jobs are going to be gone. What can we do in order to survive economically? Because without your jobs, how are you supposed to survive if these robots and AI start to take over? They say that the safe jobs will be jobs more or less in construction. So things such as builders, plumbers, electricians, and other jobs such as maybe architects. Those jobs may be safe. Okay, but 70 to 80% of our jobs are going to be gone because people are starting to become so dependent on AI for a lot of things. We have to wake up, people. The reason why AI can come in place of the jobs that we do is because people are starting to become desensitized. They're starting to become desensitized. And those people who are starting to become desensitized don't realize that you are putting so much dependence on this technology, yeah, that you start to forget about your own humanity. There are other people who oppose this technology, right? They accept it to a certain extent, but they don't want it to the extent that it's going to take over our lives, over our beings. There's some people that start to have this technology within their homes. They're starting to have, believe it or not, AI robots taking care of their children, doing house cleaning jobs, reading their children bedtime stories, even doing things such as cooking. You see, when things get to that state where you become so dependent on these machines for your survival, where you become so comfortable, eventually, what do you think is going to happen? It will start to take over and consume our lives. So, whilst you're becoming more and more desensitized, and I'm not talking about everybody, but whilst a lot of people are starting to become desensitized and becoming more programmed to these systems, they don't realize that eventually these things are going to start to take over our lives. We should be working alongside these things. We should be working alongside these technologies, not to the extent, though, where these technologies start to take over our existence, start to take over our jobs. Because without our jobs, how are we then supposed to survive? If these things come into our homes and they start to, I would say, infringe on our daily activities, our kids' lives, we will become so dependent on these things, on these machines. But you know, some people, they don't care. So now you're starting to have society that's starting to split in two. You got some people who are willing to go with this technology. They don't want this technology. Okay, they can see the dangers. And then you got some people who sit somewhere in the middle who will accept the technology, but only to a certain degree, not to the extent where it starts to take over our jobs and take over our lives. Which of these three do you sit in? Are you a person who wants to accept this technology and for the technology to take over almost every aspect of our lives? Are you somewhere in between the two, where you want to accept technology, but not to the extent where it takes over our lives? Or are you totally opposed to this? Okay? Society is starting to fragment. You got various different groups of people starting to fight against each other. And we saw this a lot during 2020, when some people refused to take the BAP, whilst others wish to take the BAP. And that caused a massive split in society. You had people who were family members who wouldn't talk to each other in workplaces, so that unless you took the thing, you could not work. Society is now starting to change. Things are starting to change. The world is changing, and so are the people within it. Some of us are starting to wake up. Some are still asleep. Another thing that's changing in society is money. The old money is starting to go, and in its place, this new money, which is called digitalized currency. Now you've got Ethereum and you have Bitcoins, and they're kind of, in the sense of, we're trying to refuse the centralized control by government, right? They're trying to cut out the middleman, yeah? And you have government now, they're trying to create something called CBDC, which is centralized digital banking system, or currency, sorry. The CBDC, centralized currency. Now you got some people, as I say, they're opposing the government digitalized money, which they're trying to bring in at the moment. In China, they have something which is called digitalized currency, but they also have something that also goes along with it, which is called social credit system, right? The social credit system, where you're awarded by government for good things that you may do. Or on the opposite side, you have, if somebody does something wrong, they end up getting punished or points taken away from them, credits taken away from them if they do something wrong, like if they say something about the government on social media, right? Or if they're caught speeding, or if they're caught dumping waste, then they will lose their credits. Whereas those people who have good credit, they will be able to do things such as be able to fly, be able to buy more food. Yeah. This system is slowly starting to be introduced into other countries around the world, into Europe. If you say something bad against the government, you might get the points deducted if we go underneath the social credit score system. If you say something good, then you may be awarded points, yeah, by the government. Now in China, there was a guy and he was jaywalking. He didn't cross the road on the proper point where he's supposed to cross, right? And he's jaywalking. And as he crossed the road, all these cameras were watching him, yeah? And guess what? Before he got to the other side of the road, money was taken out of his account. Money was taken out of his account. This is a sort of social credit score system they have in China. Do you really want that coming here to the UK, for example, or to the USA? Society is starting to change. Society is starting to change. And some people are waking up. The old ways and the old system is starting to disappear. You see, we've moved out of the house of Pisces and we're now moving into the age of Aquarius. In actual fact, the house of Aquarius came in the year 2000. And we're starting to see all these changes going on in society. Some people want to accept these changes, whilst other people do not want to accept these changes. And so you're starting to see a great divide between people in society. You're starting to see people wanting to live off-grid. They don't want to be under the control of government. They don't like the way that they see society going. So they're starting to come off-grid and going and live in the countryside. Whereas some people prefer the city. And some people are being forced to move into the city, right, by government, because they're trying now to build these smart cities, which means they want to try and get everybody to live within the confines of these smart cities, where they say everything that you need will be in these 15-minute cities, these smart cities, where your stores, your food, your places where you can walk, okay? There will be no need for you to have transport. So they're starting to build these smart cities. They want people to get off the road. No more cars, right? Because they're polluting, they're causing too much pollution. And in its place, they want to have a world where the carbon emissions levels will be lowered by having these smart cities. Are you going to be part of this new world? Well, do you want to stay in the old world with the old ways? That decision is up to you. And as I say, some people are now starting to wake up. Some people are starting to become more awake and going more in towards a spiritual world. And they start to go inside of themselves, right? And through going inside of themselves and introspection, they can then move themselves up in terms of vibration. Whereas other people who want to be accepting of the system, right, is holding down their frequency and their vibration. And so things such as religion and politics are some of the things that are controlling them. And they're happy being in that type of system. They're happy in their ignorance in a sensible way, for want of a better word. What do you want? Do you want a world change? Or do you want to stay in the old system? The world is slowly starting to change, and some people are starting to wake up, and some people are still asleep. And you're going to have some people who's going to be accepting of the matrix, whilst there's going to be some people are going to be opposed to the matrix. And so you're going to have this great divide. The world is changing, and some people are still sleeping, whilst other people are starting to wake up. This is Eldad Amara with another video, over and out.